What keeps you awake at night?
Sea levels are rising globally.
Fears fueled by horror stories.
Among the worst flu season in a decade, and it hasn't peaked yet.
We all know the atomic bomb is very dangerous.
Another series of deadly terror attacks.
I don't want to be blamed if you cannot get to sleep tonight.
Welcome to Things That Keep Me Up at Night. I'm Olivia.
I'm Brooke.
I'm Brie.
And we are continuing our series on cults today. Brie is very stoked.
I'm so excited.
We all.
Yeah. Brie has really been hyping this
I have.
episode up for a while. So I'm very stoked to hear it. I'm very stoked for you to get all your anger out. What will you be talking about today?
So, picking a cult for this episode was extremely hard because of how fucking interested I am in cults. I could have chosen from hundreds of cults from New Age cult of NXIVM, where members were literally branded with their leader's initials.
Ooh, strong contender.
Right. Or cover a classic cult, one might even say a cult classic.
Oh,
I hate you.
Shut up.
I hate you. I'm ending this call
all
right
right,
here.
well, that's our podcast, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
It was a good run.
Oh, God.
Like Jonestown, where hundreds died by committing suicide from drinking Flavor Aid.
Pat.
But I decided...
Not Kool-Aid.
Flavor.
Not Kool-Aid. It was Flavor Aid. Thank you. He wasn't... that's my thing, is he was so fucking, it was his last go, and he couldn't even buy the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
He had to buy the
Where's
off-brand.
brand name stuff? Come on, buddy.
You literally have one final opportunity to spend some money because you're gonna fucking die, and all I'm saying is, go a little bit more. Just 20
Somewhere
cents
in
more.
hell, Jim Jones is listening to us, and he's like, guys, I had to kill so many people. It's expensive.
That's true. It must have been the cyanide must have been a lot.
Yeah,
sorry.
you order that and then pick it up from the black market. That shit's hard.
Mm-hmm.
The shipping costs, astronomical.
Unreal.
Continue.
All right. I decided that today we'd be taking a trip down under and be looking at the Australian cult, The Family. So, you guys aren't really familiar with The Family, are you?
The name sounds super familiar, but I know nothing about it.
I love it. So basically, it was a cult founded in Melbourne, Australia, in the early '60s, and it's just
do you mean Melbourne? Just a sigh.
Sure.
Just punch me through the call. Just. That's fine. Anyway.
But it was founded in Melbourne, Australia, and I think the only way to really talk about this cult is to go through the history, because if I were to give you a brief synopsis of what the cult did, or the most shocking thing that it did and what it's most well known for, it would make absolutely zero sense.
Great.
So also, it's a very complex thing. They did a lot of stuff legally that I don't really want to dive into, that basically... there's just a lot of shit, and it's a lot of layers upon layers, and I'm gonna try to cover the majority of it, but let's just jump in, right? So to start off, we need to be introduced to the main figureheads of the family before I can really explain how fucked up the family really is.
Great.
So without further ado, let's meet the woman that started it all.
Ooh.
Anne Hamilton-Byrne.
Girl
Now, she is rare. She is rare because she is a female cult leader, right? So I personally haven't heard of any major cults that had female cult leaders as the main source of authority. So
just you
I really
wait.
like this one. Right.
Sneaky peeky.
It's
Anyway.
also one of those things too where I'm so glad that you picked an example of a female cult leader, because I always hear people make the comment of well, maybe it wouldn't have happened that way if there was a woman in charge. I'm like,
Right.
boy,
Which is such
there's a lot
bullshit.
of we've heard of Madame Mao, and now
Right.
we're about to hear about this woman, and I'm very excited.
I can't wait.
Well, because the thing is, people don't see women as vindictive or manipulative, right? So I
Yeah.
think, that's not true, but the majority of the time, the stereotype isn't vindictive or manipulation. But I think that a lot of women are, just like a lot of men are, and I think that I really was drawn to this cult specifically because of the fact that I wanted to see I don't know, just how fucked up a woman can get and prove a point.
Girl power.
Anyway.
That's feminism, kids.
So she manipulated and affected many people's lives with abuse and is a horrible, horrible sack of shit.
Yay.
There's no way I'm going to praise her whatsoever during this podcast. If anything, I'm gonna have to hold back some choice words that I'm gonna have to say about this woman. But
Don't sugarcoat it, Brie. Let us know how you feel.
Right. Also another thing going into this, the people who were raised in this cult and who were a part of this cult literally had no means of escaping this cult, right? They, just like a lot of other cults, they were brainwashed. And I think that's an important thing to view because a lot of people are like, well, if you're in a cult, why don't you just leave? And it's not that easy.
No, it is not. Yeah, if you've been listening to any of our episodes, I think it's very clear that, like, people can't just be like, you know what? Disagree with something. I was totally in it for the free love, but, I just don't like the direction this is taking. So I'm going to pack my bags, and they're like, oh, yeah, you know, for sure, man, not for you. Like,
right.
Not how this works.
Definitely won't kill you if you leave.
Right.
I feel like anybody who has this attitude of, oh, if you were in a cult, why didn't you just leave? It's like, rethink your perspective, pal. Like,
yeah.
Right.
what?
Also, it's made it so hard for me to listen to, like, other podcasts talking about cults, because they're like, you know, you'd think, like, when they're doing all this violent stuff, like, one person has got to be like, hey, man, this is fucked up. And I'm like, I'm sure
everyone
they
thought
do.
that.
Well,
right? But
in the Jonestown cult, there was a specific woman who was an elderly black woman who literally on the final days during Jones' last sermon, as like they were like pouring the flavor aid, basically she was like, these children don't need to be killed. Like there's audio of her basically just questioning every form of his logic.
Have you
and,
ever heard that audio? Holy shit!
Also, didn't she die? My point made, you're not gonna win by being the one guy that's like, guys, I'm rethinking it.
All you can really do is truly investigate to see whether if you want to be a part of this group, and like literally do everything in your power to understand and fully if you're joining a group or religious association, I guess, like fully commit to the bit, you know what I mean?
Commit to the bit.
You're either gonna be a part of it or you're not. So like I think that understanding it and dedicating your life to it is great, and if it gives you purpose, that's awesome, if it's truly something that you would support and live for. So that being said, let's go back to Anne.
Hell yeah. Got a little sidetracked there.
Anne Hamilton?
Sorry.
No, you're fine. It's an important sidetrack. So Anne Hamilton-Byrne is a name she was known for the majority of her life, but she was originally born Evelyn Grace Victoria Edwards in 1921 to Florence and Ralph Edwards.
I'm sorry, but if you were born Evelyn Grace Victoria, why would you change your name to Anne Hamilton?
That's what I'm saying, bitch.
Glad we're all on the same page here about her fucking name.
All right,
when I was watching documentaries and doing research, I was like, oh, I already don't like her.
Bad life choices.
But really, so basically, like I said, she was born to Florence and Ralph Edwards, and Anne didn't exactly have the best childhood. She was the eldest of 7 children, and her family was extremely poor. Her father was not there for the majority of her childhood, and her mother was schizophrenic.
Well, that's a recipe for sociopathy.
Yes.
Oh, yikes.
She was later hospitalized for schizophrenia in 1941, which granted is not the greatest time to be hospitalized for schizophrenia.
Yeah.
So her home life or lack of one caused her to be put in an orphanage. So this bit is extremely important to our story and in understanding who this woman really is.
How old was she when she was in an orphanage?
I think she was like 7.
Not good.
She was very young. She had a very, very rough childhood.
Too young for it to be like okay, and too old to be adopted. So yay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Super good.
So because of what happened later with the children in the cult, this is extremely important because something that's big about this cult is the focus on children in the cult.
That's not good.
Dear.
Yeah. Actually, I have another idea. How about fuck all this?
You know, it still brings me back when I was editing the last episode, and I said, "So let's get to the children," and Brooke went, "I'd rather not."
It's never good when we get to the children. That's all I'm saying.
Never.
Oh god.
Oh guys, I literally, it's so bad. It's so bad. So the same year her mother was hospitalized, she changed her name to Anne Hamilton, right? So this is her starting anew. She also married a man named Lionel Harris and had her first and only child, Judith Harris.
Okay.
Who was later,
Thank fucking God.
her name was later changed to Natasha, I believe.
Way better.
The fuck?
Blow up.
Which was in...
Can these people settle on a name?
That's true.
Oh, well.
Apparently not.
Damn it.
So, unfortunately, a couple years later, her husband was killed in a car crash in 1955. So if her husband wasn't killed, there's a possibility that this cult wouldn't even have been started.
Come on, husband. Get it together.
Because during this time, Anne was exploring all sorts of spiritual paths following different Indian spiritual gurus, saying they were her teachers. She also found yoga and became a yoga instructor.
See, all these things seem like okay things.
I don't know,
Right.
I don't like the yoga instructor thing.
Never trusted a yoga instructor, never will.
Well, she had a huge spiritual revelation after her first husband's death, basically. She was exploring different, like, gurus and yoga and just, like, basically, like, really finding her spirituality, right? So shortly after her husband's death, she was remarried briefly for a year to Michael Riley. Now, her second husband really doesn't have a huge impact on the story, so we're not even really going to talk about him.
Yeah, who the fuck is
except
Michael?
for the fact... True.
Whack ass name.
But the one thing that Michael did do was he introduced her to Dr. Rainer Carey Johnson.
Doctors are always good.
Nope.
Well,
Don't trust doctors, don't trust yoga instructors.
God.
all right. Dr. Johnson was labeled as, quote, an English physicist and a mystic. So Dr. Rainer Carey Johnson is a very important figure in our story because he was Anne's right-hand man in the family. They never fucked, I'm guessing.
Important note, they never banged, don't even ask.
Sorry. I just thought it's like, because there's a common misconception that they were, like, together. It's just, so I just want to put that out there.
I mean, it's
he had his
called
own
the
wife.
family. Oh, no.
Right. Well, he's a very important figure in our story because he was Anne's right-hand man in the family. Just a little background on this man. He was the headmaster of Queen's College. Which he actually had a hall in Queen's College named after him, which they had to rethink that after the scandals that came about the kids.
Oh, God, you keep saying about the kids.
I would really like to imagine, like, the janitors, like, unscrewing the letters above the hall. And they're just like,
Keep this here.
ooh.
Gotta put a new name up there.
Take a crowbar to that plaque. Like,
Maybe Barry, this is your year to shine. Maybe your sanitation just approves above this level. You can have your name up there.
Right.
So, just a little background on this man. He was headmaster of Queen's College and graduated from the University of London with a bachelor's in science and a doctorate in science and philosophy. So he's a pretty accomplished dude. Like, when you actually think about it, like, he's a pretty smart guy. I believe I read something about him actually working to create the atomic bomb and studying under the researcher that created the atomic bomb.
All right.
So he had a large god complex because he was just like a very smart man, and he just had this like I'm here, you're here kind of mentality. But he's pretty accomplished, right? So like Anne, Dr. Johnson had an interest in spirituality and published 4 books on the occult and the paranormal. Also, quick tidbit, if you guys want to do this in your free time, if you look up a picture of this dude, it's like a witch cast a spell on a shrew and turned it into a human.
What's his
name? And the
name?
end product was this guy. His name was Dr. Rainer Carey Johnson, and I feel like that description is so on point. In his later years, he looked like the Colonel from KFC lost a lot of weight.
Ooh! Yeah.
I just thought I would share it because he looks like a fucking gross weasel. If you guys want to do research on it, he's just gross. Now, something that's really fucking crazy about this whole thing was that when the duo first were introduced to each other, Anne predicted that Dr. Johnson's wife would become very sick.
Sorry, the picture just
Did you just see a picture of him? Yeah. that was my innate reaction.
Continue.
But so when they actually met, Anne predicted that his wife would get really, really sick. And sure enough, she fucking did. They actually had to cancel one of their spiritual journeys in India because of the severity of his wife's illness. So after this point, it really secured the thought in Dr. Johnson's mind that Anne was the next coming of Jesus Christ.
But of course.
Well, Anne Anne had a spirit. So this is what started it all right here, was that Anne had a spiritual revelation on one of her trips to India that she would save the children on earth from a great catastrophe and that they would start a fresh and perfect world under her leadership. So yeah, like it was basically like her whole like purpose in life in her mind was that she was going to save all the children and that there was going to be this mass World War III catastrophe, and that it was her job to bring these children to God and to start the new generation of children on the earth.
Never good.
I just know this is going to get molesty, and I'm going to get really bummed out.
Yeah.
So
That's never a good response.
So during her spiritual revelation, she was also high on LSD.
Go fucking figure. What year was this?
So that
the
might
70s?
have played into it.
60s.
Yeah, it's the early 60s.
Early 60s. God, who wasn't on LSD?
We're gonna get into that. Finally, Anne and Dr. Johnson decided to start their cult in the year of 1963 with a total of 8 members, including Anne, under the name the Great White Brotherhood of Initiates and Masters.
Oh, okay. Neat. Oh, God, it's so much worse than I thought.
Okay, keep going.
Well, Anne started to recruit followers through her yoga class, actually. It was like the first reason. They would actually also have a town hall.
Sorry, what did I fucking say about yoga instructors?
Don't trust them.
So basically, if your yoga teacher is handing you pamphlets about her new religious group, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Try a different hot yoga class.
Hey, I was really enjoying your class today. Yeah, thanks so much. Do you want to come to my white supremacy LSD cult? Oh,
you know what?
I got work that day. Thanks, though.
I think I'm gonna switch to the Olympic.
Jesus Christ.
I have kids are at home. I gotta make dinner. Oh, bring them too. Actually, it'd be better.
No, thanks. Jesus, I'm gonna start doing spin classes. Fuck this.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, the majority of Anne's followers were women that were in unhappy marriages that she recruited through her yoga class. And they could easily be manipulated and emotionally abused. So this was like her target audience. So she definitely saw weakness in people that she could manipulate.
An opportunist.
Yes. Great. Anne also gained followers through associates of Dr. Johnson. So these followers were more prestigious members of society with professions like lawyers, psychiatrists, and doctors, right?
See.
So they would basically have these like meetings where they would have like all these prestigious members and like wine and like food and just like basically like just like fancy just like parties where they would just like meet and greet, and it was a socialite thing. But then they would talk about just like religious revelations. But so basically, these members were particularly important because not only were they well-respected individuals in the community, but Anne later used people with medical professions to do some of her dirty work for her, which we will get into more detail about it a bit later.
Okay.
Now, Anne received many generous donations from her members and bought many properties from which she would expand her cult and raise the family. But none of her money went into expanding or building the cult. She was given members annual income to do so as she pleased with. They would basically just like hand over like money to her, like their annual income, and she would use it for the benefit of the family, was her reasoning.
Alrighty.
You might be asking yourself, what did this cult believe in and what did it advocate for? Great question.
Oh, thank you so much. That was my next question.
Right. So this is a quote that I thought was a pretty good summary of what they believe. The family teaches an eclectic mixture of Christianity and Hinduism with other Eastern and Western religions on the principle that spirituality are universal, like spiritual truths are universal. The children study the major scriptures of these religions and also the works of fashionable gurus, including, and I'm going to, out of quote real quick, I'm going to butcher these names, Sri Chinmani, Meher Baba, and Rajneesh. So these were some of the gurus they worshipped.
Oh, fuck, okay. Rajneesh.
Yeah.
That's actually, he had his own cult, and it's still alive to this day, but this was a cult that I was actually going to do, the Rajneesh.
Oh, shit.
And they led the first biowarfare attack in the U.S.
Oh, fuck.
Against Oregonian citizens. They planted E. coli
Holy
into
shit.
food and salads and, like, infected, like, over... I feel like it was over 100 or 200 people. I don't remember.
Jeez.
And led the most extensive wiretapping in U.S. history.
So yeah, these are the people that she worshipped.
Right, idols, absolutely. Role models.
So going back to the quote, it's basically the basis of the family's philosophy was that Anne Hamilton-Byrne was the reincarnation of Jesus Christ and a
white
living
woman.
God.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, no, she was a female reincarnation of Jesus Christ, Olivia. Jesus was said to be a great master who came down to earth, and the group believed that Buddha and Krishna were other enlightened beings who similarly came down to earth to help humanity. Hamilton-Byrne was regarded as being on the same category and level as these teachers. Jesus. One adopted daughter, Sarah Hamilton-Byrne, who's Sarah Hamilton-Byrne, is the reason why we know so much about the cult that we know. Because she was the one who was one of the survivors of the cult and came out and just kind of talked about all the shit that happened. But Sarah Hamilton-Byrne later described the group's beliefs as a hodgepodge of Christianity and Eastern mysticism.
Huh.
So, yeah, like I said, Sarah is going to be a key in exposing a lot of what the cult did. So, again, we'll come back to that later. But I think the most important thing to gain from this is, like, she, like, basically, Anne definitely believed that, like, she was the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. And she was there to save all the children. And that she was doing something good for society.
Definitely not a superiority complex.
Nope.
Nope.
Why would you think that?
I have a link for you.
Oh, no.
That's gonna prove that point even further. Okay, so basically, now we know what they believe in. Let's dive into what the cult is most known for. The children.
They're known for the children.
Yeah. Oh, no. Like I said before, Anne believed that by acquiring children that she saw as the chosen ones, and by chosen ones, I mean she would pick them for, quote, racial purity and soundness of stock.
Oh, you know what? That makes sense. Because while you were talking, I, like, Googled the children, and it was all white, blonde-haired children.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So that's something I'm going to be getting into. That's huge.
Cult.
No, really, it really is. So with the chosen ones, they could start a fresh, new, perfect world after the apocalypse that was inevitably approaching.
Why is white always perfect? Like, come on. White people have the weakest jaws.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely fair.
That's what's important.
That's the only thing that matters.
That's absolutely valid, though. She's not wrong. You can't fight her on that. Okay, so in 1969, Anne adopted 4 children. These children lived and played with the other children that had parents that were already a part of the cult. And now, if you look up, like, the actual pictures of the children, I think, Olivia, you saw the one that I'm talking about and referencing, but It's with Anne and then the children by her side, and they're all wearing matching, like, dresses with bows and, like, sharp clothing.
This is like the Stepford Wives looking, like,
yeah,
Jesus.
It's very creepy. So there was a lot of blondes because Anne was blonde and she wanted people to look like her. And the actual, like, brunettes and dark-haired children of the family were kind of, bullied for not being like the rest of them by the other children.
How dare you have brown hair?
Well, and how dare you have brown hair? Okay, I'm not gonna get into that. So, like, oh god, that's for later. Basically, so these children were a part of the cult, and the only difference from, like, their lives, the adopted children and the acquired children, was that they were raised by aunties. And aunties were a group of women that lived on the cult's property of Kailama in Lake Eildon.
Oh, this is very The Handmaid's Tale now.
It's
no.
Horrible. So Kailama was a facility that they had where they would just raise the children of the cult. And Lake Eildon they called it Lake Eildon, is frankly makes Crystal Lake from the Friday the 13th franchise look like a fucking summer retreat based on the real life horrors that these kids grew up with. The aunties would force the children under a strict vegetarian diet and a strict schedule.
Oh my god, that's the worst fucking thing I've ever heard.
So,
sorry.
Whoa. Here's
worse stuff?
That's as bad as it gets. They were just forced to be vegetarians for years. And it was horrible.
The beans.
I've had so many black bean burgers. Scarred me for life.
Oh
God
I'm getting so many
damn.
tweets in response to this.
So here's a quote from Sarah Hamilton-Byrne, who again is our
adopted
basically
daughter.
our testimony of information. Like she is her and other founders or other survivor stories are like what we can mostly go off of.
Okay.
But it's basically, this is exactly what her routines were. This is a quote from her. At 6 a.m., the children made their beds and the boys and girls showered on alternate days. There was an hour of hatha yoga, 15 minutes listening to Anne's sermons, or Swami Muktananda's...
Yikes.
I definitely mispronounced that. Muktananda's... Muktanan. It's a hard name to pronounce.
Correct you. So
I'm so sorry, and I literally that's a beautiful name. I literally do not know how to pronounce it. But anyway, and they were listening to his teachings. 15 minutes of mantra chanting, 15 minutes of meditation, and 15 minutes to set up the schoolroom. Breakfast was 2 hours after they rose and was fruit only. After breakfast was 3 hours of schoolwork with a short break halfway through. Then 1 hour of meditation or playing Spaceball, a game devised by Anne that was...
Thanks, Olivia. You always got my back.
always.
Anyway.
So this was a game that that was devised by Anne that was boring to play. It was specifically made to be boring.
What the fuck?
In a small...
Sounds like church camp.
I really hate it. It's a small lunch of fruit and steamed vegetables. The next 3.5 hours involved lessons, a short break, and packing up the schoolroom. From 5 to 9 p.m., the children meditated, ate a bland vegetarian meal, and read spiritual texts and did their homework before going to bed.
Why can't they use
So-
spices? Why? What's wrong with spices?
Because vegetarian.
White. Fair
Sorry.
enough. Fair enough.
So the children were starved and beaten most of the time. Like the meals that they were served were very minuscule and did not have the proper things that they needed to actually grow. And they had a lot of developmental problems, and just like physical development. There was children who were recorded to be one age but look like they were 7 ages younger, just in how their bones developed because of how malnourished they were. And then also they were physically beaten. They went through a lot of physical abuse on the daily.
Why?
So quickly, there's just a warning for physical abuse here if you want to skip over this. It's not really that graphic, but I'm going to be talking about one girl's experience was basically the aunties would beat them whenever they would have bad behavior, but they would also beat them when they would do a negative behavior or not follow a rule that the aunties haven't even told them about yet.
Awesome.
Nice.
So they would literally there was, even if you were the perfect child in the cult, there was no way to escape the beatings. Basically what they would do is they would beat you with just sandals, rods. Here I actually have the notes of what things that they would use to beat the children. So basically they were beaten with just things around the house, whatever they could beat them with. Children also believed that and were told that UFOs would come down, and if a UFO were to happen to come down, that they would all have to walk into the UFO with no hesitation whatsoever in a perfect single file line and let the UFO take them, because during that time the world would end, and then the UFO would later drop them back off to reestablish the new world.
God.
I'm sorry. I know it's supposed to be really fucked up, but I'm just imagining they're so then a UFO is gonna pick you up and take you around for a little bit, and then they're just gonna come back and drop you off. Play nice with the UFO babysitters.
Right.
And
and also the world will be over when you get back. Have fun.
Right. So I found it. Aunties would beat children with rulers and canes. There was one instance where a little girl was running away from one of the aunties, and she thought her best bet was to hug a pole and have just the auntie whip on her back with the cane as long as the auntie felt she needed to. And so she just has that specific memory in her head of just the crucial beatings.
That's bad.
During the beatings, Anne encouraged sect members to call her so she could hear them being disciplined.
Why? So, she's a sadist, is what I'm getting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Cool.
I mean, she was a lot of things.
Great.
So basically, right. So like they would undergo these like horrible beatings. The children were starved, beaten, and dosed with prescription drugs as well as illegal drugs such as LSD. So giving children LSD is like so harmful.
Yeah. Yes. Correct.
Right. And I don't have time to go into the science behind all of it, but it permanently will fuck you up.
Yeah, I think we can just like take it as, imagine what LSD does to an adult. Now think about it on a developing brain.
On a 7-year-old.
What?
Yeah.
That's insane.
So LSD was specifically used to brainwash children into perfect beings that would follow her every order. She would also use LSD for rituals to initiate new members, and the rituals were called going through. And we're going to talk about exactly what those rituals are, but children were succumbed to that ritual. Sarah, in particular, the girl that revealed all of the cult's doings, she basically said that her ritual took place when she was 14 years old, and that she was in a New Haven hospital when the doctors were giving her LSD and drugs, and it was an unknown pill she takes. She still doesn't know what they gave her, but she would just have like bits of her waking up and coming to, and like seeing Anne there, and like they would try to make, like she said, they told me that the goal was to see Anne as Jesus and to come to a spiritual revelation through the LSD. So she was trying really hard to just like basically like accomplish this goal. And Anne would bathe her and wash her during this time when she was in the hospital. So like everyone had to go through these initiation rituals, and anytime anybody acted out, they would have another initiation ritual to remind them of who Anne really was, which was their savior, Jesus Christ. So the thing about LSD is, like, if you take it as like a consenting adult, obviously that's different, right? These people were children. And so I think that was something that was really horrific for me, was because they literally, and like sometimes they wouldn't even tell them. They would just be like, oh no, you just like had a spiritual revelation. So,
okay.
Yeah. Now, if we remember, some of her prestigious members of the cults were doctors and psychiatrists that could easily access these drugs and medicate the children. Mm-hmm. One member in particular, named Howard Whittaker, worked at a hospital called New Haven, and they would use his power in the hospital to not only steal copious amounts of drugs, but to steal other things as well.
Other
so
things?
Let's pin that idea.
What kinds
and we're
of
gonna
other
come
things?
To it. These children were also psychologically abused by Anne, pushing her insecurities out on children, causing some of the children to develop eating disorders. They would actually weigh the children and compare their weights. So a lot of them had eating disorders and were shamed for their weight at a very young age. And when I'm talking very young, I mean like 6 or 7. So also they naturally became extremely brainwashed into thinking that the rest of the world was evil, which is definitely a cult-like tactic. It's an us versus them mentality. And through their abuse, they associated adults as evil and not to be trusted whatsoever.
Okay, cool.
So they literally, the only person they could trust was the other children in the compound. But even then, like, some of the other children would make fun of the ones that like weren't adopted first or had brown hair and stuff. But it's like they literally, like, they were brainwashed and indoctrinated to do that. Yeah. So like, can't really blame them. So other than abusing children and changing their lives forever, what else did Anne like to do in her free time? She and John mostly traveled spreading the word of the family across the world. They traveled a lot to the United States and United Kingdom, and would have her followers listen to her sermons and messages when she was away. When she was present, she would enter every meeting to Handel's Largo, which we're about to play for you right now. So this is what she would walk into.
Opulent. Fuck, dude.
So they had to play this at like every meeting that she went to, and like this would be like her just like introduction. So it goes on. Like I just wanted you to know like what the song is like. So this is
the kind of person we're dealing with, eh?
Yeah, exactly. that's all it is. She would also hand out pictures of herself to have her members worship in her homes.
In case they forget.
So when she wasn't preaching or abusing children, she would mentally and emotionally...
Sorry.
Well, I mean...
It just sounds like it's like a Match.com bio. Like
when she's not
preaching or abusing children, she likes long walks on the beach and reading.
Jesus.
Right. Well, she would also mentally and emotionally abuse members of the cult, right? Because she had to keep them in line as well. And here are just a couple examples of all the shit that she would pull. So she would change members' names so they could fraudulently sign documents for her. Make them change their nationalities and sibling dynamics. And what I mean by that is, if you were born like an Australian person, you're now from New Zealand, and this person is your brother or sister, and you guys are twins.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
End pre-existing marriages so she could form new ones that she saw as a better fit, quote unquote.
What?
So she literally, like, you'd come into the cult and you'd be married to a dude, right? And you'd be like, oh yeah, this is my husband. You guys would be
Or a
like,
lady. No, that's probably not allowed. Who am I fucking kidding? Gays aren't allowed there.
and so she was like, like, this is my husband, like, blah blah blah. We're devout followers of you, and she'd be like, you know what, like, Karen, I think you'd be a better fit for John.
What the fuck?
So I want you to divorce your husband and marry John and have children with him.
No.
And her followers would 100% do that, though.
What?
And
Sorry,
I would watch interviews.
Wow.
Yeah, I would watch interviews with some of the followers who were like, I love my husband and he was great, and didn't. Well, like, cause like, and he was like, they were like, I just don't want to leave him, but I guess I'm gonna marry this person that, like, Anne wants me to be with, and then they would have children together, and it would just be like awful and emotionally like just like horrible stuff, and have to raise a family with the children that they didn't even want to be like with their partners with, you know what I mean? Like,
that's awful.
Right. So have the woman get plastic surgery and wear blonde wigs so they could be like her.
Cool.
Force woman to give birth to children so that she could raise in her existing cult, right? And then make members undergo drug-induced initiations that were previously mentioned, called going through, to bind them to Anne and show them that Anne had validity in her teachings and she was in fact Jesus Christ. So when you entered the cult, you had to go through one of these procedures, right? Like, this is the initiation. And the only way that you would do it again is if you acted out and they needed to brainwash you even further. But at that point, you're just being drugged. There's a story of a woman who basically was in one of the hospitals. And I'm going to go a bit into her story just to kind of talk about some of the things.
Okie dokie.
So basically, Margaret Brown was her name, and she was a member of the sect for 8 years. Was told after 10 days to get married to a man that she just met after 10 days and have a child between the men. She got to pick from two, right? So she literally was like part of the sect for 8 years, right? Anne came to her and was like, hey, you have 10 days to pick between these two guys I picked out for you and have a baby with them. So she did.
Okie dokie.
Margaret was told that after marrying and falling in love with a man, that in a past life she had killed this man, thus this gives the man the right to do whatever he wanted to her. And he was then instructed to beat her badly.
Okay.
So, clearing sessions where basically members of the family were taken into a discreet location and given LSD and manipulated into thinking that Anne was Jesus. This is what it was. It was called clearing sessions, and then you would have going through, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was one example of the marriages. Now there's another example from a survivor named Barbara Kibbe. And Barbara was treated very badly by Anne during and after her pregnancy. And this is another one where it was like she was instructed by Anne to get pregnant. And Anne just basically like emotionally abused her through her pregnancy, which like on it like is horrible. Like stress during pregnancy, not a great thing. And so Anne told members not to interact with Barbara during her pregnancy, and she became completely isolated. She was treated so badly that she became extremely depressed and physically ill. Anne also instructed followers not to visit her during in the hospital after she had her children. So, due to her illness, Anne decided it would be best to move the children to Ilden, essentially. Anne was like, you're not fit to be a mother, so I'm going to move your children for you to this lake facility where all the other children are raised. Her children, David and Matthew, were also heavily abused while at this facility. David was sent back to his mother 7 years later because Anne said he would have died otherwise from starvation. And he had absolutely zero memory of anything that happened to him before the age of 7.
Yeah, of course. That's so
and
awful.
then Right, so that was David, but Matthew dealt with severe depression and killed himself at the age of 20 because of the amount of abuse that he underwent with the cult, right? So there's a lot of children from the cult who later on decided to end their own life or have at least suicide attempts. Actually, Sarah, the one that I was talking about earlier, attempted to kill herself multiple times, and one of her suicide attempts ended with her losing a leg and having her leg have to be amputated. But she eventually died in 2008 I don't know what the causes of her death were, but I don't believe it was suicide.
Damn.
So we don't know, but her funeral was like a Buddhist funeral, and it was really beautiful, and I think that she should be honored and respected because as a survivor, she came out and she was the one to kind of blow the whistle on the whole thing.
Damn.
So should we make it worse?
Oh,
Why
no.
fucking not?
Hey, before we get to this next part, you remember when I said the worst thing that could happen to them was the vegetarian diet? Hey, my B.
So basically Anne couldn't have like a lot of children on her own. She only had her one child in the entire history of her life, right, with her previous husband before the cult even started. But she would fake pregnancies and wear around maternity wear to give the illusion that she was giving all these children giving birth to all these children. But she never actually had any of them. So the whistle was kind of blown on the cult when a group named oh god, what's it called? It was basically like a police force in Australia at the time that had a secret mission to go under and investigate Kailama, which was the specific facility for children, because they heard of abuse. I'm not going to get into all of that, of the actual like case that brought them there, even though like that's important. Like we don't really have a lot of time, because I think we're going to have to talk about what's about to happen next. Basically, the raid was conducted by a group called let me see if I can find it. I wrote copious notes. So Operation Forest was the code name of the task force to investigate the cult, right? And they know that they kept children there, but they didn't know exactly what was going on. So at this point, by the time that the Operation Forest happened, it was the year 1988. Oh, no, 1987. 1987 was when the raid happened, specifically at 6 a.m. on August 14th. So basically, also during this time, Anne divorced her husband, Michael Riley, and remarried Bill Hamilton-Byrne, and that was her partner for the rest of her life up until his death in 2001. And so that's where the name Anne Hamilton-Byrne comes from. So just as a clarification. So she had a total of 3 marriages. But so during this raid, essentially, they found children in this facility, and after the raid, sect members burned any form of documentation or writing about what happened in the cult.
Uh-oh.
That's not good.
Right. So we literally don't know a lot of the shit that went down. We believe there was a lot of money laundering and fraud because that's what she was accused of and later brought to trial because that was the only thing that they had over her. That had like evidence. And although the children's testimonies, I guess, just were not enough, right?
Yeah, okay.
So, basically, during this raid, they found a lot of disturbing stuff. And as they were interviewing the members of this cult, the children were around like 20 years old now. So it had been going on for a very, very long time. And they basically spent all of their childhood just growing up in horrible, horrible abuse and with this manipulation of like Anne is Jesus, and they were actually scared by the police because of the fact that like that's all they knew, right? So basically Bill Hamilton-Byrne and Anne escaped overseas and used telephone audio recordings to control their followers. And the cult by the time of its like apex was 200 people. So it wasn't huge, but
That's
it was still very impactful.
People. That's like close to my graduating class.
Jeez.
Right. She, when asked why she had collected like all these children, she said that it was because she loved children in an interview, and that she wanted the children to look like brothers and sisters, and that's why she chose the white children.
Oh boy.
So they were alleged to, the largest amount of kids at the time of the apex of the cult was 28. Children were always accompanied by the adults of the sect. Basically, in Australia during the 60s, it was very shameful to have children out of wedlock. Very shameful.
Right.
So there was a lot of young women who were getting pregnant and having to either have abortions, which really was not an option, or to give their children up for adoption and hide the pregnancy. So what families would do is they would send their daughters away for months at a time, and then they would come back and the baby would be gone, and then she would be fine to start her life again. And they would tell them they were going to a retreat or going away. So it was a shit ton of shame in giving up children or in having children. So a lot of these women would give them up for adoption. But again, at this time, the adoption system in Australia wasn't strong whatsoever. So Anne illegally adopted a lot of the children that were in the cult. And this was done through hospitals. And she would have the doctors and psychiatrists in hospitals convince the mothers to give the children to the cult, and have zero documentation associating themselves with their own children, so that way Anne could say that they were her children and her new offspring. So basically, I watched a documentary where their children are trying to get reunited with their parents. And a lot of them got to luckily find out who their parents at least were. Some of their parents were dead, or some of them just didn't want anything to do with them. But some of them actually got to meet their parents, and so that's horrific, because you don't know who your biological parents are, and you're told that your cult leader is your mother, when in fact that is not true whatsoever.
Right,
she only had one of the children.
That's so
Did they say
damaging.
why she didn't have any more kids? Because I wonder if this is a thing where she
she
was
couldn't?
no longer fertile, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
she obsessed
I'm
with.
guessing. Basically, she stole all these children from hospitals with the help of her doctor's friends. And there was a lot of fraudulent behavior, which is basically that's what the court of Australia tried to try her under. It was just fraudulence with money, signing fake checks that she would have her members sign under her name, just a lot of legal stuff. So she was tried. How much time did she get, guys?
5 years.
Okay, Brooke?
You know what? I'm gonna go with hopeful. 10 years.
So she got zero time,
What the
zero
fuck?
retribution for all of her acts. She now lives, she's 98 years old and lives in a facility in Melbourne, Australia, and has dementia, so she has zero recollection of what she did during her life.
My dear Lord.
And she is living happily in a facility where people are taking care of her. And she's 98 years old, so she's up there, so hopefully she dies soon.
Hopefully she dies.
Well, I don't give a shit.
No, I agree. That's okay. That's usually dementia is not a good thing, but I really truly believe she got the easy way out with this one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because she doesn't have to
she
live
truly
with
did.
everything that she did.
She literally, and she had a lot of compassion towards animals during her time. And she said, she was quoted as saying, having more compassion about animals than her actual followers. This was, and I just want to, again, and this is something that I really do want to stress, is that people were so indoctrinated into this cult that they had literally zero control
Yeah, of course.
what they were doing. So I want to read an experience of a going through session that Johnson had with her. It was Johnson's going through session, and he worshipped her. He worshipped her. And it was, Anne decided to rise to the high state of consciousness known to masters and God's conscious souls as samadhi. Her face became, to my human eyes, supernaturally beautiful, and she spoke with authority and divine power as one might imagine the Christ would do if speaking to the first person to each person there. Looking around slowly, she said, "Do you know who I am? I and my Father are one. My peace I leave with you. You will be my gurus, and all of you," she said, that we would never again experience such a visualization from her as Jesus, but to know that she was him, the master of masters himself. So, that being said, the members of this cult truly believed all of this shit that she was spouting through manipulation of drugs and LSD, and as well as just brainwashing manipulation, just psychological manipulation, right?
Yeah.
that being said, there's no excuse for the abuse of the children in that cult.
Nope.
There was a lot of members who said when they gave birth to children in the cult, they were extremely worried about their children because of the abuse that they felt, but they felt that they needed to provide for Anne, so they're willing to do that. And they feel extremely guilty. The most thing that they feel guilty about is like bringing children into this world and like exposing them to Anne's cruelty.
Sure.
So yeah, she's lived her life without zero retribution, and I think that her husband died in 2001 of cancer, I believe.
Okay.
Oh, it doesn't say. It doesn't say. So yeah, she had dementia, and Sarah Moore died actually in 2016. My apologies, not in 2008. But where I got confused was she died from unspecified causes because of a suicide attempt that she had in 2008.
Oh, okay.
So literally, but that's the thing is, it's like it's so impactful where people don't understand how damaging like these people like have had their lives like these people will never ever be the same because of this woman. And she's like, she has no clue of what she's done, which literally gave me the chills. Like, she doesn't even know.
Which makes me so mad.
I know.
Right.
My God.
She has no clue. So I do encourage you guys to watch the documentary that I watched, just because it has a lot of information, and it has a lot of like audio recordings of Anne and like how she just like painted herself, and like how she interacted with press later on in her years, and like I think it has a lot of information that like I didn't get to dive into because of time. But I think the important thing that we need to realize about this is that anyone is capable of falling under this type of shit, that with enough emotional abuse and enough of like just manipulation, that like you can to be a part of a cult, and that these were real people with real lives that were affected, and that like it's scary and it can happen to anyone.
Is that what keeps you up at night?
That's what keeps me up at night.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, because this literally just started with like some people were going to yoga, trying to relax,
Right.
and like led to this weird artificial selection of children thing. Like,
Right.
goddamn.
Yeah.
And
Fuck,
then they were mercilessly beaten with or mercilessly went to beating children with canes and rulers, and forcing
Damn.
the children to undergo like horrible conditions.
Yeah.
So yeah, also what keeps me up at night too is just the fact that like, again, she faced no repercussions
not at
from
all.
her actions, and she's gonna die comfortably in a bed with.
You know, what is really interesting to me is like, I don't know, very infrequently do I see like these cult leaders face repercussions, whether you have Jim Jones who like killed himself.
Right,
so
right.
He can't fucking ever get punished for that. Manson literally only got punished because people died.
Right.
But like when you have something like this, like even the Westboro Baptist Church, like Fred Phelps 100% should have been arrested for child abuse. But
Right.
like, you know, because of, you know, the US specifically is very protective towards religion and like how people are allowed to raise their kids. They just like, they're like, well, everybody raises them differently. I wonder if that's similar to what this is, where like it's a
Yeah.
religious protectionism thing, where they're like, well, we don't agree with them, but everybody has a right to raise kids themselves. Like,
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if that's it, right? You
But the
know what I
gays
mean?
can't get married, Olivia.
Oh my God, no!
The gays.
Oh my God, no!
There would be anarchy.
Right.
Yeah.
But I got the majority of my information from like essays that people did around the cult, quotes from Anne's book, and also mainly the documentary called "The Family, the Children Stealing Cult."
Sick.
So, you know, like I highly encourage you guys to check that out. The actual documentary, you have to pay for it. Or if you are not encouraging at any form or point in this type of behavior, but I'm sure you could find it online somewhere.
Yeah, piracy's a crime.
Sure.
Piracy is a crime. So
We're not saying pirate it. I'm just saying there are venues to watch
That-
it without paying.
Yeah, that they exist.
They're out there. We're not telling you to do anything.
We're not the boss of you.
But no, yeah, it's do you guys have any other questions or like things that you wanted to talk about?
Dude, I'm just trying to take it in. Like,
right.
God damn. I didn't even know this existed this morning. I woke up happy.
Yeah, you woke up with 2 kittens in your arms.
I did.
Eating cereal.
I did.
Life was good.
It was
Ladies.
Good. And then I learned about this bullshit that existed.
I think the thing that makes me so mad about this is, like, you know, it's one thing if your parents were in the cult and you were born into the cult, because, like, still, you're not having a say in it, but, like, you at least understand, like, wow, these people are brainwashed, and then, you know, these kids are brainwashed, and, you know what I mean? Like, it's fucking sucks.
It's awful.
But it's a whole nother thing when, like, kids are being stolen from hospitals.
Yeah.
Like, that's not even, you know, you're being raised in an environment where your parents are near. Like, that's like...
None of it is your fault 1,000%.
Yeah, like, there's literally nothing anyone in your life really could have done. Because also, you know, you imagine, like, there's a lot of shame in having a kid out of wedlock. So this is just like, hey, solution, you'll never see the kid again. And you're like, hey, I like that solution because I don't want to be socially excommunicated.
Right.
Man, and that must really suck because, like, it sounds like you'll never know if your kid was the one in the cult.
That's gotta be crazy. That, like, you'll just never know.
Yeah, unless you really went out of your way to do, like, DNA testing and they wanted to do DNA testing. I don't know, this happened so long ago, though. Like, this is one of the reasons I really think 23andMe is useful in, like, finding and reconnecting people. But, like you said, a lot of the parents are dead because this happened in, like, the 70s.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right.
Which is unfortunate.
Right, well, because, and that's the thing, too, is it was, like, Australia's, like, adoption at the time was just, like, very, like...
Yeah.
Horrible. I also encourage you guys to just, like, look up pictures, because the pictures look like something from a fucking horror film.
Yeah.
Like, the way that the
I
children
looked at some
that I
pictures, and if you
saw.
look up the family, they're all wearing, like, matching outfits.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Well, because, like, if you... I'll send some over via our odd chat, but if the viewers at home want to, look at, like, how, the children, like, just, like, looked, like, all of them have, like, matching blonde bowl cuts.
Ugh.
Like,
Yeah,
matching
it's a bowl cut.
sweaters.
My God.
It was the 70s. What a wild time.
Yeah, but it's like, these children didn't even have a chance. And I think that it's important to fully understand what you're doing and how you're impacting people.
Yeah, what happened to the children? Like, when this cult was over, did they just get, like... Because some of them, 100%, like, they had biological parents that they could leave with. Yeah. Right? But, like, what about the ones that, like, weren't hers? Like, what happened to them?
They were put in protective, or like the police basically just like got them and put them in protective services and stuff, and police basically just took them out. Like, if that raid didn't happen, I wouldn't even know, like, what would happen.
So, like, we have a little bit of time, so can you just, like, do a quick synopsis on why they did the raid?
Okay, so the exposure of the family in media began in 1980 when a little girl called Kim Holm, who was 10 years old, went missing. Basically, her mother, Patricia, was a member of the family, and her father went to the police to actually find her daughter and get the daughter back.
Okay.
So the case went to court, and 2 of Anne's followers, which were lawyers and a lawyer and a doctor, lawyer Peter Kibbe and Dr. Christabel Wallace, both testified against Hans Holm, which was the father of the little girl that went missing. So, and then the judge ruled that they did not answer questions honestly, and
Perjury.
ordered Patricia Holm to return Kim, issuing a warrant for her arrest. And Johnston and Jones state that a week later, in September of 1983, mother and daughter were found in Auckland, New Zealand. They were using the names Jeanette Berger and Jeanette D. Haven, and were using a motel. Using a motel.
Wow, that's rough.
Fuck.
Hey, man.
I can see why you can't handle the Indian names.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Can't even speak English, you fucking
I'm illiterate.
moron.
Yeah, I guess so. But they were using a motel as a contact address, and Kim had been abducted by her mother. So the case did not spark like an inquiry into the family. But the next year, in 1984, was important because Victorian state adoption laws were changed to give adoption children access to birth records.
Okay.
And so then after the 1987 raid, an adoption worker named Brian Cusin was given the task of finding children's birth parents, and he was assisted by Marie Moore, who basically was there to ask women to like tell their stories about like how they were chastised for having children out of wedlock. So basically, they were just like investigating the legal processes of adoption, and then the Operation Forest continued the investigation. So basically, it was just like a couple of suspicious activities, and also the family was already like really well distinguished in the press at this time because of just like how they were spreading globally. So it was just basically like people were just interested enough to actually investigate it, and thank God they were. So there is also like a lot of like money laundering and just
bad shit,
a fuck
man.
ton of manipulation and just like to their benefit. And she literally would buy just like mass facilities and things for herself with the members of her cult's money.
Actually, that's a really common thing too, because the Rajneesh, the guy that I was going to do, there's a documentary on Rajneesh. It's on Netflix. It's called Wild Wild Country. Maybe you've seen it. Yeah, that's the documentary. He had like 20 Rolls Royces.
Wow.
Literally, like, would parade himself around in his variety of Rolls Royces that he bought with his followers' money.
That's excessive.
And, like, these people, this is a unique one. They weren't living in squalor. They were actually flourishing. They had their own farms. They worked together. Like, this was one of the few where, like, they were living comfortably and living happily, but they were also living minimally. Like, it was, like, a communist thing.
With the family, too, it was, like, they, like, Anne had, like, a lot of facilities that she paid for, and they were really nice facilities. I mean, minus the abuse that would happen in them, right? But she got this money from just directly her followers. So she would also wear really expensive clothing and jewelry and, like... bitch. Yeah, there's no positive aspect of Anne for me. In just the sense that she was extremely manipulative, and people actually quote to say that, like, kind of dead look in her eyes of just like no warmth, like niceness. I mean, and we got to remember she like listened to calls to hear the abuse of children, because she quote unquote loved the children. So
I do really wonder from a psychological standpoint, since she never had any more kids, if she was making the choice not to have kids from like some like aesthetic standpoint, right? Like. Or, like, didn't want her own children to be involved in that. But I feel definitely more if she's stealing children from hospitals that she probably can't have kids. And wanted to have more kids. And, like, she picked them in her image, right? Like, it wasn't just white children. It was white children that looked like her. She made the women put on blonde wigs. Like,
and get plastic
surgery. About her, you know what I mean? Like, like Eminem's music video, but the cult, you know?
Hey, man, well...
Hey, man.
You don't want laughs for that.
Well, because my whole thing is, like, also, she also was, like, claimed to have performed miracles, too. I didn't really go into that, but, like, she, like, said that she would, like, she healed her daughter, from, like, major, like, physical trauma that she went through in a car accident, but that was all fake. She faked pregnancy. So it was, like, she knew what she was doing, you know what I mean? But in her head, my thoughts is, like, did she really, like, was she psychotic? Like, did she actually know what she was doing?
Yeah,
but we'll never know.
Yeah, they probably didn't do enough research into it at the time, which is so unfortunate, because I love the psychology of this. Like, that was my big thing with Fred Phelps, is I wanted to fucking understand why he did what he did. And literally my best theories were he had issues with his father rejecting him, not thinking he was a man enough. And, like, then every single, successive choice he made in his life was a direct rejection of his father's values.
And like, it's despicable, of course, but you sort of understand it
Yeah.
In
At the very least, I just
context.
want to understand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just want to be like, still fucked up, still hate you, but, like, I understand why you did what you did. This one, I, like, you know, again, just like I did with Fred Phelps, we can only guess, which is more fucked up. I really wish more people, like, got information. Well, I mean, she's senile now, so, like, not a lot you can do.
I'm sorry that this was kind of short. It's just if I start diving into all the legal stuff, it gets pretty icky.
This is about the same length as my Salem witch trials one, so
perfect.
Yeah, tis good. Tis good.
Tis good? Did you guys enjoy learning about the family?
enjoy
fuck,
is a
dude.
strong word.
Right.
I
you
enjoyed
guys
your telling. I
disturbed?
didn't
I did.
enjoy the story.
I did.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank God. Also, quick little tidbit here. So for you guys following us, we have a lot of different like social media, and like things that you can follow us on. We have a Twitter, we have an Instagram, we have, and there are places our podcasts are posted. Is on iTunes, and the big deal about iTunes is if you could give us a review on iTunes, we'd really, really appreciate
Yeah, that would be
it.
amazing.
Yeah.
Because like it really, really, really helps promote us. So
Yeah, it's just literally their funky algorithm.
Yep.
Like, they only promote you based on the volume of reviews you get. I don't really give a shit what you say. I'm not really reading it for like, oh, hell yeah, guys, look at us. We got all these 5-star things. It is literally more, it gets our name out there. Like, it's really
Right.
motivational to, like, have people listen, get feedback,
Although if
which is
you
really
want to
dope.
give us 5 stars, I'm not gonna argue with you.
I mean, I wouldn't be upset. You
we will
know.
not stop you, but we understand just any form of review would be absolutely incredible. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play,
We sure are.
Stitcher, Pocket Cast.
All of them.
Our social
Yeah, leave
media
a review on like whatever you use would be dope, but I know iTunes at the very least, it
Right.
definitely
Right.
helps with the reviews.
our social media is at TTK Me Up, and we're on Instagram and on Twitter. So you can find us there, and we post like pictures and updates of when we're actually posting the podcast.
Yep.
So we're trying our hardest to be real podcasters.
We're real
We're
podcasters.
doing it. Let's do all of our social media. So, Brie, your social media?
Oh God, do I even know what I am?
Oh, fuck. All right, well, I'll go first. I'm Stylized Reading on Instagram, and I'm Vanilla Oldie on Twitter. I know. It's an anagram for my name.
I'm at Genius Brooke on Instagram, and I think my Twitter is the Open Brook with underscores in between all the words.
Oh, that's cute as
Oh,
fuck.
I know, right? Thank you.
On our Twitter, I retweet both of them, so that's
Right.
also that's helpful.
I'm famous. Thank you.
Yeah. I honestly Instagram I never ever use. So but I use Twitter
I know,
all
I
the
can tell
time.
because you never like my memes.
Oh.
Call the fuck out, Brie. Like, Jesus Christ.
My Twitter, if you want to see some memes and fun stories just about my day and
I love her
some
Twitter,
some sad
so.
stories. My Twitter is Brianna_Crane, BRIENNA_Crane.
We can probably put them in the
CRANE.
description as well.
Yeah, for
We'll do our
sure.
best.
And let us know if there's any topics that you guys want us to talk about things that keep you up at night. Also, we're starting mini-sodes.
Yes.
If you have a clever name for the mini-sodes, tell us a clever name for the
We
mini-sodes.
would love that.
We
We're
would
really
love
bad
that.
at coming up with
Tweet
names,
at us.
I guess.
Yeah.
We're not punny. And those mini episodes are just going to be like more of a conversational instead of an informative type of thing where we talk about shit that really disturbs us or shit that mildly bothers us. We don't know yet. So
Thank you for joining us.
Thank
This
you.
was fun.
Hell
It
yeah.
has been real, and we're not responsible for keeping you up at
No, we're
night.
not.
absolutely not.
All right. Night, guys. Deuces.
See you later.
Bye.